Hello, everyone, and welcome to How I Built This video edition. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. Hope you're healthy. We are here, of course, to talk about business resiliency, how businesses are building resiliency. And we're taking your questions right now on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Twitter. This is Food Week. We're talking to some of the most inspiring chefs and restaurateurs all this week about some of the amazing things that they are doing. And before we kick it off with Alice Waters and her daughter, Fanny Singer, I really just want to thank Comcast Business for supporting NPR and How I Built This during a time when we really need that support. Comcast Business, which is powering my connection right now, is prepared for times like these, powered by the nation's largest gig speed network to help give you speed and reliability and security and the tools to manage your business from any device, anywhere, and a team of experts 24/7. So for more, go to ComcastBusiness.com. We could not do these shows without them and their support. So thank you so much, Comcast Business. Okay. All this week, as I mentioned, we're talking food and restaurants. There are more than 1 million restaurants in the U.S. This is an industry that employs more than 15 million people. And many of those people, as you probably know, many of you watching and possibly are out of work right now. But so many restaurants have been doing incredible things to help feed frontline workers and to help feed people in need, and also doing some really creative things to try and help out the farmers and the producers who provide our food. One of those restaurants is Chez Panisse in Berkeley, California. It is one of the most iconic and famous restaurants in the world. And its founder, Alice Waters, helped to popularize local and organic and farm-to-table eating in the United States. She is a legend. And if you haven't heard Alice's story on How I Built This, you can find it on our podcast feed. Alice is also, as you may know, a food activist. She's a founder of the Edible Schoolyard Project. I'm so excited to have her with us. Next to Alice is her daughter, Fanny Singer. Fanny's a writer, a cook, an art historian, and author of a new memoir about food. It's called Always Home. They are both at home always in Berkeley, California. Alice, Fanny, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
And just a reminder, we are taking your questions on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube right now. So first of all, how are you guys doing? How are you holding up?
I feel very lucky because I'm looking out of my redwood tree out in the backyard. We have a very small garden, but a huge redwood tree. And I have this sense of nature in the room right now. And I feel like we're also incredibly grateful to all of our friends and cooks that are dropping things at our doorsteps. And we're very lucky to have connected with Bob Kennard's farm, and we get to eat this food now.
Yeah. And Fanny, I know that you are kind of sheltering in place with your mom right now in Berkeley. And you guys have been doing these really great Instagram videos. The recipes are great. So thank you for the inspiration, because I made some of your recipes. How's it been? I mean, I guess on the one hand, sort of strange, obviously, and scary, but I mean, a lot of concentrated time with your mom right now, too.
I mean, it's not lost on me, just the degree of propheticism with that book title that I selected.
Always Home.
Of total absurdity, yes, always home. And now I'm quite literally always home all the time in the house that I detail at length in the book. So it's a sort of strange, very surreal moment. I live in San Francisco and I do still have an apartment there, but it's a 1-bedroom apartment, and my partner and I are there together. We both were working at home, and there's no outdoor space. And being in Berkeley was not just to be with my mom, who I obviously was concerned about too, just because I wanted to be able to be a sort of insane person about disinfecting mail and, like all the things. You learn from Always Home that I'm a little bit more germ-centric than my mother. So these things were concerns of mine, but also, I mean, to echo my mom's sentiment, to be in Berkeley in a place that has a really rich outdoor environment, and to be able to walk through, I mean, there are 137 paths in the hills of Berkeley, and to just be able to walk for 10 miles all around the hills is like the only thing I think kind of keeping me from total uncertainty.
Yeah. Alice, tell us a little bit about what's going on with Chez Panisse right now. Obviously, you've been closed for what, 5, maybe 6 weeks. What's going on with the staff right now?
But we wanted to really pay the staff for their time off so that when it comes time to reopen, that they would be there and available. So we had the good luck to get a kind of bridge loan from some wonderful friends of the restaurant that are helping us get to the point where money comes from the government to pay people.
Wow. So you've still been able to keep most people paid for a while?
Yes, some are on unemployment and some are being paid a portion of their salaries. But
wow.
it's really important to me that people are paid at this time. If I have to, ask my friends, I have to ask my friends.
Alice, one of the things I read about, which is super cool, is that obviously you work with a lot of small farmers all over California, and a lot of these farmers, presumably, I mean, they supply restaurants, right? So first of all, what from your conversations with the farmers that you normally work with, who supply your restaurants and your restaurant and other restaurants, I mean, what is their situation like? I mean, how long can they go like this without having restaurants to supply?
It's very serious what's going on with our whole organic farm community, because they really have only the farmers markets to bring food to, and the number of people that are going to farmers markets is not what it usually is. And it's very difficult for them. So we're trying to figure out how to connect to buy that food from the farmers. And we have a project in Stockton, California. The mayor of Stockton is very enthusiastic about getting organic food into the public school system. And so at this moment in time, he asked if we could help to buy food from the farmers so that he can give it to the people who are most needy in Stockton. And I thought that would be a perfect way for us to begin building that network that we're going to need for the public schools. And we're putting little recipes into the boxes so that people know how to make very simple dishes.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderfully successful on both ends. And we've given at least 4,000 pounds of food away in Stockton.
Wow.
But that requires collaboration with a philanthropist, or that can see that the future of food is going to be local, and I hope regenerative and organic. For the silver lining of this epidemic.
Yeah. Alice, I follow you on Instagram, and you're worth following on Instagram for anyone who's watching. And you've been really, I mean, you've talked about this for years, and you talked about this on How I Built This, and in your memoir, that when you were a little girl, your parents had a victory garden at home in New Jersey, and where you grew up, and that you really are encouraging people to plant their own things. You actually inspired me so much. I've got some seedlings here. Can you see my seedlings? Some good lettuce seedlings in an egg garden. So there you go. And I'm gonna hopefully that'll be lettuce in a couple of months. But it's really, I mean, I don't have a big backyard. I have a small space. I got a planter. But for people who don't have a backyard, who might live in an apartment, I mean, what are some ways that people can think about growing their own food?
Well, I keep looking at Ron Finley down there in Southwest.
Ron Finley, yeah, great TED Talk.
Central.
If you haven't seen it, you should watch that TED Talk. Yeah,
And he started by planting food out in front of his house in that little parkway between the sidewalk and the street. And it caused a lot of controversy. And he actually was cited for violating some ordinance about it. And he went to court and he won his case. And he actually has planted that whole strip of land. So, sort of thinking about him, I did the same thing. I dug up that little plot right in front of my house. But I think you can plant like you have done in planter boxes on a balcony. And getting to know our neighbors is a very good thing. I hope that the really community gardens begin to,
Surge.
yeah,
My mom planted a little section that's just in front of our house that is
Yeah.
exactly that little parkway section as a symbol. Because even though we do have a garden in the back, she wanted people to think about this victory garden moment and the potential for even the most throwaway pieces of land. And
Yeah.
actually, it's now planted with a few different edible things. And she's already gotten notes through our mailbox thanking her for taking this kind of action symbolically and encouraging people. And you've just seen this proliferation of gardens now in people's sort of little forgotten front yards, and people sowing seeds all around the neighborhood now in this way that's really incredible. I've just never seen anything like it before.
What do you know? One of the things that you've talked about for so long, Alice and Fanny, you're familiar with this too, is the idea of buying local produce, supporting local farmers wherever you are in the country, around the world. And so many of us have gotten used to being able to, in the Northern Hemisphere, get raspberries in December from Chile, or, get produce that's trucked all the way across the country whenever we want it, or halfway around the world. And I wonder whether this crisis and the potential crisis for this food supply chain is in some ways could kind of force us to rethink how we eat and where we get our food from, and even small things like planting a little garden that might give you a salad once a week.
Well, I know that we're going to need some greenhousing up in Maine, but I know that we really can eat locally and seasonally. And in fact, that decision to do that was the most important decision we made at Chez Panisse. It means that you're never eating second-rate, year-round fruits and vegetables. You're only eating the food that's the ripest and tastiest, and you anticipate the strawberries in May, and you anticipate those peaches in September. But when it comes to winter, you have to think differently about the food. And we don't eat anything, serve anything at the restaurant, or I don't eat anything. It's not something that really is grown within a very small radius of the restaurant.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe there's some little.
But what it's really revealing now, I think, is the extent to which local supply chains are the most resilient ones. So even, you're talking about a lot of the farmers who are having trouble supplying or getting their produce to people because of this pandemic, and that's really true. But you look at a tiny community like Mendocino, where there are maybe 5 farms on it, right? There's a bunch of farms up there. And actually, right now, one of the farms, Nye Ranch, is doing incredible business because there's so much demand suddenly for just what can be got there. And and those members of that community are very lucky to have these farms who can deliver CSA boxes, who have open air farm stands. He was showing my friend Kyle who runs Nye was showing me a video just of the line of cars queuing up for that farm stand. And I mean, that's obviously that's a special case. But where we have those farmers growing local produce and where there are people who are dedicated to buying it, you do have this inbuilt system that is resilient to this type of economic damage. You know, it's like it's just making itself so plain in this moment that when you have the producers and the willing consumers.
Resetting. Okay, go. Here we are. We're back. Are we back? We are back. Okay. Thank you for your patience. Sorry about the delay. I'm here with Alice Waters and her daughter, Fanny Singer. We're talking about food security. We're talking about local food. We're talking about restaurants. Alice, and Fanny, we're getting a lot of questions from Facebook and from Twitter and from YouTube. So if you are watching right now on any of those platforms, please submit your questions. We'll try to get to them. This one is from Danielle Sandusky. She asks, how do you think restaurants will stay in business with reduced capacity? And once they're kind of back in business, will they have to increase their prices to stay in business?
We're talking about that right now. We have a board of directors, and we're trying to understand how we can open up again, and especially when protocols are still in place. I'm not sure we can. It's a very small restaurant that we have, and I'm trying to imagine maybe we'll do like a pop-up restaurant someplace else. That's my latest thinking, is maybe we could open almost like a circus tent situation where it's big enough, and maybe we show movies, and maybe we have tables very separated, and maybe we cook outside. I don't know what we could do, but my real concern is about, of course, keeping everybody busy and working and paid and taking care of the farmers. I don't know whether it's sort of farm work we're going to get into, but I feel like this is a wake-up call about climate change.
Yes.
It is right around the corner and upon us. And we know that regenerative agriculture is the best way to immediately address it. And so what could be more hopeful for our health and for the health of the planet to make this happen, this connection to the land, bring people back into nature.
You know, one of the questions that we're getting on from folks on Facebook too. This is from Belle Zelazny also, which is, how do you, what are ways that we can help small farmers? You know, I mean, you've been a huge advocate for small farmers forever. I mean, you've been very vocal in your kind of opposition to industrial factory farms, what are called factory farms, and a huge supporter and ally of small farmers who are working with nature and the land. So how can we help farmers? I mean, one way, of course, is to go to farmers markets. Not all of us feel comfortable doing that right now. Are there ways, are there places where we can go and find out how we can buy things from them, especially farmers who are used to providing restaurants?
Now, there are a lot of farmers who are involved with community-supported agriculture who already are preparing boxes and bringing them to people who have paid in advance and support farmers in that way. I've always believed in that idea, and I'm hoping when we open the schools again that they could be that engine for the organic farming community and the ranchers who are really, you know.
I'm
Yes.
going to just butt in.
please.
I do think that, we have in Berkeley, obviously, an extraordinary wealth of people surrounding us who are farming locally. It's easy to find a CSA and get a box and have it delivered to the doorstep, and especially in this moment, to not feel terribly apprehensive about going to a farmer's market. I think if you are at a loss for who your farmers are, do the work of researching. Look, call around, call the farms, see, are you having trouble? Are you imperiled? Is there a way that I can help you even facilitate a network of deliveries? Can I help you deliver? Do you need help in your fields? I think depending on what your comfort level is in terms of how dirty you want to get your hands, but also it might be a question of just helping them figure out logistics or even knowing who they are, where their farms are. I mean, I have friends in LA who couldn't, they were shopping at Cookbook, which is a lovely little produce store and grocery store, but the lines were so long that they weren't able to get any food. So they just started figuring out who the farms were that they could drive out to outside of LA so that they could still get great produce. And I mean, it's been a little bit more sort of problem solving and resourceful, and also knowing that the farmers are maybe really good at growing vegetables, but don't necessarily know how to work a whole distribution network. And if that's something that you have extra time for or facility with, like, make the effort, because they do need us.
Thank you for that. That's a great suggestion. As both of you know, I'm not too far from you here in Oakland, California, so I have access to many of those farmers. But I lived in Washington, D.C. for many years, and there are great small farmers in Pennsylvania and Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, who grow food for farmers markets and for restaurants in that area and all over the country. We had Jenny Burton Bauer on of Jenny's Splendid Ice Cream. She sources so much of her stuff from Ohio, from around Columbus, Ohio. This is a question from Jen Gagnon. She asks, do you know of any efforts that we can contribute to that would specifically help undocumented immigrants who help get our food to our tables, who may not be eligible for relief aid during this time? I think it's a great question. We are dependent on undocumented migrant workers who come to this country and pick fruits and vegetables that land on our plates. They are not eligible for relief. So what are some ways that you may have heard of or know of that we can help out or contribute?
Well, I've recently just got connected to Dolores Huerta, and she has the foundation, and she is the most up-to-date around taking care of farm workers. And so I really recommend her foundation.
Yeah, Dolores has an incredible website that explains kind of precisely how you can at least financially donate and contribute. And they've really pivoted to working to ensure that farmers right now are getting the care that they need and also the security that they need in this pandemic moment. So
that's DoloresHuerta.org. I just looked it up. Yeah, we've had her on previously on our podcast. She's incredible.
She is amazing.
Yeah. That's a great suggestion. So this is a sort of a question along the lines of what we've been talking about from Fiona Yu, and I think it's worth digging deeper into it. She writes, we've seen an increase in people trying to buy produce locally, with the recent change in the supply chains. How she's asking how, Alice and Fanny, how do we make sure this becomes the new normal and that people don't revert to their going to mass-produced produce and just buying whatever the cheapest thing is to buy? How do we make it so that we make this the new normal?
Well, I'm focusing really on public education. And if the school systems took this up and really began to educate children from kindergarten, if they would grow up, taking it as their only way to feed themselves. And I know from 25 years of the Edible Schoolyard Project now that when kids are engaged with the garden and with cooking and feel empowered that they are changed and they will always feed themselves in this nutritious way. And it's a beautiful thing to watch. I call it a delicious revolution, but it's through education. And I'm hoping that the University of California could be a great engine for supporting all of those farmers and ranchers.
I think on a more sort of domestic scale, I think just the sheer fact of how many people are cooking
Yeah.
is a really good thing. I mean, I was out on a walk yesterday with my friend Alex, who, like me, cooks all the time. We're both at sort of a loss, not being able to entertain. And then we're seeing all of our friends who like never cooked for us or never invited us over, like cooking like mad, like making bread and making pasta. It's actually not that's not a tiny thing. Like there's a generation who we almost a kind of lost cause culinarily, and there's perhaps a concern that we were going to lose a lot of these traditions, or actually just by the force of these conditions, actually making food and re-engaging with it. And I think once you taste, if you're getting a produce box, and once you start to taste what it really tastes like to eat in season, it's hopefully pretty convincing. I mean, I think it does take a sort of personal commitment to it, and you know, to not just revert. But I think that just the act of being so engaged in the kitchen, it is its own kind of education that a lot of people are undergoing.
Yeah, I mean, totally. And you guys have been talking a lot about this by producing these little videos in your kitchen, which is awesome and inspiring. I mentioned that earlier, and I'm going to show you something that hey, like everyone else, I'm baking bread. Here's my no need bread, that famous recipe, and it's great. And in fact, you had a recipe on the other day. It was beans on toast, and it was like you make your own beans and put it on toast. It was great. It's amazing. Thank you. What are you cooking right now that is giving you some comfort at this time?
Well, I feel like coming home pasta, which we've rebranded as always home pasta. Coming home pasta was a recipe that we would make whenever we'd come back from a long trip to kind of feel oriented back in our house. And it's the sparest. It's like it's totally a pandemic recipe, because it's like anchovies, garlic, chili, things that are preserved, little capers, maybe some parsley if you have it. And we've been eating coming home pasta at least once a week. There's something very homey about it, but it's also something that feels very achievable right now. So the first little videos that you're citing was actually coming home pasta. But trying to make these recipes that also stretch things and that make use of one ingredient over a long period. It's both satisfying and necessary, and also sort of comforting to know what your meals are going to look like over the course of the week.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking yesterday. We had Kyle Connaughton on, chef at Single Thread, and talking about some of the incredible things that they're working on. And he made this really important point, which is never before in living memory for most people have we spent such a concentrated amount of time at home with our families, which of course there's some bad there, but there's a lot of good. And I mean, like the two of you spending all this time together, like when was the last time the two of you spent such a concentrated amount of time together? I mean, probably not since you were a little girl, Fanny. And I've got my kids at home, and we're eating all our meals together, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it's pretty incredible. I mean, there's the relationship between home, with our homes is also changed because we're spending so much time here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we've gone on some occasional longer trips, so we've been in these other places doing that, kind of in, say, like renting a house in Sicily or something for a few weeks. But this was definitely, so it's not untrod territory, but this is definitely a more durational experience of it. And it's like you say, we're in our homes. We're not somewhere else experiencing having other new stimulation. We're very much in this place, which is why, this book that I wrote, which was about the more figurative relationship to home, ended up being a thing that I think instructs also in how to be comfortable in your actual home, how to feel like there's a change of atmosphere from one room to the next. If you burn a branch of dried rosemary, you reset the smell of a place. Or my mom is always putting on a stock. We're having like there's a chicken stock. I mean, she'll do that wherever we are, but like now there's this almost like ritual chicken stock once a week, and the way that just marks time in your week too, even to prepare things that have a very sensory, we have a very sensory relationship to. It's like the rosemary to kind of be purgative, the picking a rose or a flower or something outside that you can smell that will give you a little bit of a shift of atmosphere, which I think, these are things that I talked about in this more like abstract way that are now like actual tools that we feel like we're using all the time.
Yeah, it's like we're like all living in the 19th century in the best ways. The 19th century a little bit. Alice, before
we're always living in the 19th century.
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true. Before we go, Alice, if in 5 years' time from now, when we talk about this period, and I say to you, what was the thing that you learned from this, or that you took away from this period, or that changed, not just for you, but for maybe for the food industry, for your restaurants, that that allowed you to build more resilience into what you do? What do you want that to be?
I don't want to take anything for granted. I want to really be in present time. And I think, the walk that I take every morning, and I see, the plant in bud, and then it blooms, and it's so hopeful. And it's so important in my everyday life that I am somehow connected to nature in what I'm eating, and to really pause, to light the candles at the table, and really feel grateful. I think that's something that I will always feel.
I love it. Alice Fanny, stand by for a sec. I want to just shout out to a couple of people watching. I won't get to everybody, but 30 Dolatre in Manila, Philippines, Mansi Tibrawala in India, Kevin Riddick in Victoria, British Columbia, Crystal Martinez in Chicago, Barb Miller in Minnesota, Kylan in Hayward, Tanya Zelger Aim in Northern Virginia, Natalie Albin in Warwick, Rhode Island, Karen Snell Cohen in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, Leanne Maddox in Nashville, Tisa Hauk in DeLand, Florida, and many others. I'll try to get to you over the next few days. Don't forget, there's so many of you watching. Thank you so much for being part of this. Don't forget, this week is Food Week, all week. Tomorrow, we've got Daniel Hume, the chef of 11 Madison Park. He's going to talk about some of the incredible things they're doing. They've taken this Michelin 3-star kitchen. They are making 2,000 meals a day for hospital workers, for people in homeless shelters, for elder care. It's just unbelievable what they're doing at 11 Madison Park in New York. We've got Christina Tosi on Thursday from Milk Bar. And Jose Andres will join us, a friend of Alice's, on Thursday, also on Thursday at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Friday, we've got Samin Nosrat, somebody who worked at Chez Panisse in the kitchen many years ago, knows Alice as well. So just incredible people this week. Join us here every day, 9 a.m. Pacific, 12 noon Eastern, for conversations about food. Thank you for watching. Alice, Fanny, thank you so much for joining us. It's been so great having you.
Thank you.